In the year 2247, humanity had finally joined the Galactic Union, a vast coalition of advanced civilizations spread across thousands of star systems. It was a moment of triumph for Earth, marking its transition from an isolated planet to a respected member of interstellar society. But with membership came rules, some strange and others downright baffling. One such rule, decreed centuries ago by the ancient and powerful Vailith species, mandated that every human male must marry 3 non-human women from different alien races. This law, long ignored or loosely enforced, suddenly became a point of contention when the Vailith sent envoys to ensure strict compliance. Their reasoning? To promote genetic diversity and cultural integration within the Union. For humans, however, it felt like an invasion of personal freedom, sparking outrage among those who saw it as forced assimilation. Ethan Rains, a 32-year-old space pilot stationed on Mars Colony Alpha, found himself unwillingly thrust into this bizarre situation. Ethan wasn't extraordinary. He was just an average guy trying to make ends meet in a universe far bigger than he ever imagined. When the Vailith envoys arrived at the colony, they announced their decision with cold efficiency. Ethan had been chosen as one of the first participants in this enforced union. Resistance was futile. Refusal meant exile from the Galactic Union and banishment to a distant penal planet where survival was unlikely. With no other option, Ethan boarded a massive Vailith diplomatic cruiser orbiting Mars for what could only be described as an intergalactic matchmaking event. The ceremony aboard the cruiser was surreal. Representatives from countless alien species gathered under glittering lights, exchanging formalities while the Vailith overseers watched silently. Ethan stood awkwardly in his plain uniform, feeling out of place amidst the vibrant colors and intricate designs worn by the aliens around him. Then, one by one, his brides were introduced. First came Zenara, a towering warrior queen from the planet Cytherian. Her sleek silver armor shimmered in the artificial light, and her piercing golden eyes seemed to look straight through Ethan. She carried herself with authority, exuding both strength and grace. Despite her intimidating presence, there was something regal about her, as though she commanded respect without asking for it. Next was Nexura, a telepathic scientist hailing from the aquatic world of Luminaris. Her translucent skin glowed faintly, giving her an ethereal appearance. Unlike Zenara, Nexura spoke softly, her voice barely above a whisper, yet her gaze held an intensity that unnerved Ethan. She explained that studying human emotions would help bridge the gap between their species, though Ethan couldn't shake the feeling she was analyzing him like a lab specimen. Finally, there was Calith, a mischievous shapeshifter from the jungle moon of Viridia. At first glance, she appeared human-like, with flowing green hair and playful eyes. But within moments, she transformed into a small bird-like creature, chirping cheerfully before shifting back to her original form. Calith's unpredictable nature made Ethan uneasy, but her lighthearted demeanor offered a brief respite from the tension. As the introductions concluded, Ethan realized this wasn't just about marriage. It was about forming alliances with entire civilizations. Each woman represented not just herself but her people, culture, and values. And now, whether he liked it or not, Ethan was tied to all 3. For the first time, he wondered how he'd navigate this impossible arrangement. Would these women become partners or prisoners? Could he find common ground with beings so vastly different from him? Or would this cosmic decree tear apart everything he believed in? Little did Ethan know, his journey was only beginning. Ethan's new life began aboard Unity Station *, a floating city provided by the Galactic Union as a shared habitat for interspecies couples. The station was a marvel of engineering, with towering glass domes offering breathtaking views of nearby stars and sprawling gardens filled with alien flora. But for Ethan, it felt more like a gilded cage than a home. Every corner reminded him of the strange arrangement he'd been forced into, and every interaction with his wives brought a mix of curiosity and discomfort. Zenara wasted no time asserting her dominance. On their second day together, she dragged Ethan to a training arena, insisting he learn basic combat techniques. Strength is survival, she declared, handing him a practice blade that hummed faintly with energy. Ethan stumbled through the drills, earning sharp rebukes from Zanara whenever he made a mistake. Despite her harsh demeanor, there were moments when her tone softened, like when she noticed Ethan struggling but refusing to give up. Her golden eyes betrayed a flicker of respect, though she quickly masked it with sternness. Nyxera took a different approach. She set up a lab in one of the station's private chambers and invited Ethan to join her experiments. At first, he thought she merely wanted to study his biology, but soon realized her focus was deeper: human emotions. Using advanced neural scanners, she mapped his brain activity while asking probing questions about love, fear, and trust. "Your species is fascinating," she murmured during one session. "You feel so much, yet understand so little." When Ethan asked why she cared, Nyxera hesitated before admitting her own arranged marriage had failed. "Perhaps understanding you will help me understand myself," she said quietly. Calith, on the other hand, kept things unpredictable. One moment she'd be lounging in her room, flipping through holographic novels. The next, she'd vanish entirely, only to reappear hours later in a completely different form. Once, she startled Ethan by shape-shifting into an exact replica of him while he was brushing his teeth. "How do you see yourself?" she teased, mimicking his confused expression. Beneath her playful exterior, however, Calith seemed guarded. Ethan caught glimpses of sadness in her eyes when she thought no one was looking, hinting at secrets she wasn't ready to share. Back on Earth, tensions escalated as protests erupted against the enforced marriages. News feeds buzzed with images of angry crowds chanting slogans like "Freedom over Federation." Commander Avatores, Ethan's childhood friend and leader of a rogue faction, became the face of resistance. Her fiery speeches rallied supporters worldwide, calling for outright rebellion against the Vailith decree. Ethan watched these broadcasts late at night, guilt gnawing at him. Was he betraying humanity by staying compliant, or was he simply trying to survive? The turning point came during a simulated battle drill organized by Zanara. Designed to test teamwork, the exercise placed Ethan and his wives in a virtual environment where they had to fend off waves of enemy drones. Midway through, Ethan tripped over debris, leaving him vulnerable to attack. Without hesitation, Zanara leaped in front of him, taking the brunt of the impact. Though the simulation ended shortly after, Ethan couldn't forget the look of determination on her face as she shielded him. Later that evening, he approached her cautiously. "Why did you do that?" he asked. Zanara hesitated before responding. "We may not have chosen this bond, but we are bound now, and I protect what belongs to me." Her words struck a chord. For the first time, Ethan considered the possibility that his wives weren't just pawns in the Vailith's game. They were individuals navigating their own struggles. As days turned into weeks, small connections began forming between them. A shared laugh over dinner, a quiet moment of solidarity during a tense argument. These fragments of humanity, or perhaps something beyond it, gave Ethan hope that maybe, just maybe, they could build something real out of this forced union. But outside Unity Station, the storm was growing fiercer, and Ethan knew their fragile peace wouldn't last forever. As Ethan adjusted to life aboard Unity Station *, cracks began to form in the illusion of harmony imposed by the Vailith. The more time he spent with Zanara, Nyxera, and Calith, the clearer it became that they each carried burdens tied to the marriage law, and none of them were truly free. One evening, while exploring a secluded section of the station, Ethan stumbled upon Calith sitting alone on a balcony overlooking the stars. Her usual playful demeanor was absent. Instead, she stared silently into the void, her green hair glowing faintly under the artificial light. Sensing his presence, she turned to him and sighed. "You think this is about unity," she said softly. "But it's not. It's control." Calith went on to explain that her people, the Viridians, had once been enslaved by the Vailith for centuries. Though officially freed, they remained under constant surveillance, their culture suppressed, and their voices silenced. The marriage law, she revealed, was another tool of oppression, a way to dilute human influence while keeping other species dependent on the Valeth's favor. They don't care about blending cultures, Caliph added bitterly. They care about maintaining power. Ethan listened intently, his mind racing. If what Caliph said was true, then humanity wasn't the only victim here. Every species involved was being manipulated. He decided to dig deeper, enlisting Nyxora's help. As a scientist, she had access to classified databases and agreed to investigate the origins of the marriage mandate. Late at night, while Zinera trained in the arena and Caliph wandered the station, Ethan joined Nyxora in her lab. Days later, Nyxora uncovered something shocking. The marriage law wasn't based on any scientific or cultural necessity. It was rooted in fear. According to ancient records, the Valeth viewed humans as unpredictable and ambitious, traits they considered dangerous to galactic stability. By forcing humans into unions with multiple alien species, the Valeth hoped to dilute Earth's potential for rebellion. It's a calculated strategy, Nyxora explained, her translucent skin glowing faintly with anger. They see us all as pawns in their game. The revelation weighed heavily on Ethan. Back on Earth, resistance against the Valeth grew fiercer. Commander Avatores led a daring raid on Unity Station, aiming to rescue abducted husbands and wives. The attack caught everyone off guard. Explosions rocked the station as rebel ships launched a surprise assault, disabling key systems and causing chaos among the inhabitants. Caught in the crossfire, Ethan found himself torn between two worlds. When rebels stormed the residential wing, demanding compliance from unwilling participants, Ethan instinctively stepped forward to shield his wives. "They're not prisoners," he shouted, drawing stunned looks from both sides. His actions earned him glares from some rebels, but also gratitude from Zinara, who muttered, "You risked your life for us." The standoff ended abruptly when Valeth warships arrived, threatening to destroy Unity Station unless order was restored. Reluctantly, the rebels withdrew, leaving behind a tense silence. Afterward, Ethan confronted Zinera, demanding answers about her role in all this. She admitted that her warrior clan had been coerced into supporting the law under threat of annihilation. "I didn't choose this either," she confessed, her voice cracking slightly. "But I can't defy them alone." Her vulnerability struck a chord in Ethan. For the first time, he saw his wives not just as individuals, but as allies trapped in the same web of oppression. Together, they realized that if anyone could challenge the Valeth, it would have to be them. Allies united by shared grievances rather than forced bonds. As Ethan stood with Zinara, Nyxora, and Caliph amidst the wreckage of the failed raid, a spark of determination ignited within him. They might not have chosen this path, but now they had no choice but to fight back. For themselves, for humanity, and for every species caught in the Valeth's iron grip. The aftermath of the rebel raid left Unity Station in disarray, but it also planted a seed of defiance in Ethan's mind. He knew they couldn't rely on Earth's resistance alone to dismantle the Valeth's oppressive system. It would take cunning, strategy, and unity among those directly affected. For the first time, Ethan saw his wives not as strangers thrust into his life, but as potential partners in rebellion. Together, they began crafting a plan that could challenge the Valeth's authority and expose the truth about the marriage law. Zinera took charge of rallying support from other warrior queens bound by similar mandates. Through encrypted communications, she reached out to leaders across the galaxy, sharing her own frustrations and Caliph's revelations about the Valeth's manipulative tactics. To Ethan's surprise, many were eager to join forces. Some had long harbored resentment toward the Valeth, but lacked the courage to act. Others saw this as an opportunity to reclaim their autonomy. Slowly, a secret alliance began to form, a coalition of species united by a common goal. Nyxora, meanwhile, focused on exploiting weaknesses within the Valeth's infrastructure. Using her scientific expertise, she uncovered hidden loopholes in the marriage law's legal framework. The Valeth's authority, she discovered, relied heavily on outdated treaties signed centuries ago. Treaties that could be invalidated if enough evidence of coercion came to light. With Ethan's help, Nyxera devised a risky plan: infiltrate the Vayleth communication network and broadcast damning proof of their crimes directly to the Galactic Union. If successful, it could turn public opinion against the Vayleth and force them to abandon the law entirely. Kelith played a crucial role in gathering intelligence. Her shape-shifting abilities allowed her to slip unnoticed into restricted areas, eavesdropping on Vayleth officials and uncovering critical details about their operations. One night, she returned with alarming news. The Vayleth were preparing for a massive crackdown on dissenters, including Unity Station. Time was running out. They needed to act quickly before the oppression tightened its grip even further. Amidst these preparations, Ethan found himself growing closer to his wives. Late-night strategy sessions turned into heartfelt conversations, revealing vulnerabilities none of them had dared to share before. Zenara confessed her fear of failure, not just for herself, but for her people who depended on her strength. Nyxera admitted she often doubted her worth, feeling like an outsider even among her own kind. And Kelith finally opened up about the scars left by Viridian enslavement, explaining how her playful demeanor masked deep-seated pain. These moments of connection strengthened their resolve. During one particularly harrowing mission, Ethan and his wives worked together to retrieve stolen data from a heavily guarded Vayleth outpost. As they navigated treacherous corridors filled with automated defenses, each woman showcased her unique skills. Zenara led the way with unmatched combat prowess, Nyxera hacked security systems with precision, and Kelith distracted guards by disguising herself as one of them. When they narrowly escaped detection at the last second, adrenaline gave way to laughter and gratitude. For the first time, Ethan felt like part of something greater than himself. Their bond wasn't forged by law or coercion, but by shared struggles and mutual trust. Though their journey was far from over, he realized they had already achieved something remarkable, a family built on choice rather than obligation. As the pieces of their plan fell into place, Ethan looked at Zenara, Nyxera, and Kelith and felt a surge of hope. Together, they weren't just fighting for freedom. They were proving that unity didn't have to come at the cost of individuality. Against all odds, they were becoming more than allies. They were becoming a team. The rebellion reached a critical turning point when the Galactic Council summoned Ethan and his wives to testify before a tribunal. The Vayleth, eager to silence dissent, had accused them of inciting unrest and violating interstellar law. For Ethan, Zenara, Nyxera, and Kelith, this was both an opportunity and a grave risk. If they could expose the truth about the marriage mandate, they might sway public opinion against the Vayleth. But failure would mean imprisonment or worse. The trial took place aboard the Celestial Forum *, a colossal space station that served as the seat of galactic governance. As Ethan walked into the grand chamber alongside his wives, he felt dwarfed by the towering alien representatives seated in concentric rings above him. The air buzzed with tension as cameras broadcast the proceedings live across the galaxy. Billions watched, waiting to see whether humanity's defiance would crumble under Vayleth pressure or ignite a revolution. Ethan was the first to speak. Standing at the center of the chamber, he delivered a passionate speech about free will and mutual respect. "We are not pawns to be moved on your chessboard," he declared, his voice steady despite the weight of countless eyes upon him. "This law isn't about unity. It's about control. It forces us to abandon our identities and betray our values. Is that what you call progress?" His words resonated with some council members, particularly those from smaller species who had quietly resented Vayleth dominance for years. But the Vayleth envoys dismissed his arguments as emotional manipulation, accusing humans of being too selfish to understand the greater good. The debate grew heated, with accusations flying back and forth until the chamber erupted into chaos. Outside the forum, however, tensions escalated further. The Vayleth deployed warships to surround Unity Station, intending to crush the rebellion once and for all. News of the impending attack spread quickly, forcing Ethan and his allies to make a desperate decision. They couldn't wait for the trial's outcome. They needed to act now. Back on Unity Station, Nixera worked tirelessly to execute their plan. Using data gathered by Calith and encrypted codes provided by Zanera's warrior network, she hacked into the Vyleth communication network. Her goal was simple yet audacious: broadcast evidence of the Vyleth's crimes directly to every corner of the Galactic Union. If successful, it would expose the corruption behind the marriage law and rally other species to their cause. Meanwhile, Ethan prepared for battle. With Zanera leading a coalition of warriors and Calith infiltrating enemy lines, they devised a daring strategy to disable the Vyleth flagship, the command center coordinating the assault. Ethan piloted a modified fighter craft, weaving through enemy fire alongside Zanera's fleet. Explosions lit up the void of space as ships clashed in a dazzling display of firepower. Inside the flagship, Calith used her shape-shifting abilities to bypass security checkpoints, sabotaging critical systems while avoiding detection. Her heart raced as alarms blared around her, but she pressed on, knowing their survival depended on her success. At one point, she narrowly avoided capture by transforming into a Vyleth officer, slipping past guards just moments before they sealed off the area. As the battle raged on, Ethan faced a devastating choice. To destroy the flagship's core, he would need to fly his ship directly into its engines, a suicide mission. His hands trembled on the controls as he considered the cost. But then, through the comm system, he heard Zanera's voice. "You don't face this alone," she said firmly. "We stand with you." One by one, his wives joined him in the final assault. Nixera coordinated the attack remotely, guiding them through the flagship's defenses. Calith triggered internal explosions to weaken its structure, and Zanera led reinforcements to cover their retreat. Together, they executed a maneuver so daring it left the Vyleth reeling. When the flagship exploded in a fiery burst, the tide of the battle shifted. The remaining Vyleth ships retreated, leaving Unity Station intact. For now, though battered and bruised, Ethan and his wives emerged victorious, their bond stronger than ever. They had struck a blow against tyranny, proving that even the smallest acts of defiance could spark hope in the darkest times. The destruction of the Vyleth flagship marked a turning point in the rebellion, but Ethan and his wives knew the fight was far from over. The explosion had crippled the enemy fleet and bought them precious time, but the Vyleth were not a species to back down easily. Retaliation was inevitable, and every second counted as they raced to complete their plan. Back aboard Unity Station, Nixera worked feverishly in her lab, her translucent skin glowing faintly with exhaustion. She had successfully hacked into the Vyleth communication network during the battle, but broadcasting the evidence of their crimes required precise timing and coordination. One misstep could alert the Vyleth to their actions, giving them a chance to sever the connection or discredit the information before it reached the public. Ethan stayed by her side, offering support where he could. "How much longer?" he asked, watching as streams of alien code scrolled across holographic screens. "Almost there," Nixera replied, her voice strained but determined. "Once this data goes live, it will reach every corner of the Galactic Union. There's no way the Vyleth can suppress it then." While Nixera finalized the transmission, Zanera rallied their allies. Warrior queens from across the galaxy had already begun mobilizing their forces, ready to defend Unity Station against any counterattack. Calith, meanwhile, used her shape-shifting abilities to gather intelligence on the Vyleth's next move. Disguised as a low-ranking officer aboard a damaged Vyleth cruiser, she overheard plans for a massive assault, a last-ditch effort to crush the rebellion once and for all. "They're coming," Calith reported grimly when she returned, "and they're bringing everything they've got left." With the clock ticking, Ethan and his wives made one final push. Nixera initiated the broadcast, sending waves of encrypted data streaming through the Vyleth network. Within minutes, the truth spread like wildfire, exposing centuries of manipulation, oppression, and forced assimilation. Across the galaxy, Protests erupted as species once loyal to the Valith turned against them. Even members of the Galactic Council began calling for an investigation into the Valith's actions. But victory came at a cost. As the broadcast concluded, alarms blared throughout Unity Station. The Valith fleet had arrived, launching a full-scale assault. Warships descended upon the station, firing devastating beams of energy that tore through its defenses. Panic surged among the inhabitants, but Ethan and his wives remained resolute. "We can't let them silence us now," Ethan said firmly. "Not after everything we've done." Zenera led their defense, commanding a coalition of warriors who fought valiantly to hold the line. Ships clashed in fiery bursts of light, filling the void of space with chaos. Ethan piloted a fighter craft alongside Zenera's fleet, dodging enemy fire while targeting key vessels. Each explosion brought them closer to collapse, but also closer to freedom. Inside the station, Calith sabotaged critical systems, buying precious time for the evacuation of civilians. Her quick thinking saved countless lives, though it left her dangerously exposed. At one point, she was cornered by Valith soldiers, only to escape by transforming into a shadowy creature that slipped through their grasp. As the battle raged on, Ethan faced a heart-wrenching decision. To disable the Valith command ship, he would need to sacrifice himself, flying his craft directly into its core. His wives refused to let him go alone. "If you die, we die with you," Zenera declared, her voice unwavering. Nyxera and Calith nodded in agreement, their bond stronger than ever. Together, they executed a daring maneuver, weaving through enemy fire to deliver the final blow. As their ship collided with the command ship's core, a blinding explosion lit up the sky. The Valith fleet faltered, retreating in disarray. When the dust settled, Ethan and his wives emerged battered but alive, their victory secured. The marriage law was repealed, and humanity, and countless other species, finally won the right to choose their own destinies. Though scared by the ordeal, Ethan realized something profound. Through unity and courage, even the strongest chains could be broken. The aftermath of the rebellion brought a wave of change that swept across the galaxy. The Valith, their authority shattered by the exposure of their crimes, were forced to step back from power. The Galactic Council voted overwhelmingly to repeal the marriage law, granting autonomy to all affected species, including humanity. For the first time in centuries, individuals could choose who they wanted to share their lives with, or if they wished to remain alone. Ethan and his wives returned to Earth as heroes, celebrated not just for their role in dismantling an unjust system, but for proving that unity didn't have to come at the cost of individuality. Crowds gathered in cities worldwide to welcome them home, cheering loudly as Ethan stepped off the shuttle alongside Zenera, Nyxera, and Calith. Reporters swarmed them, eager to hear their story, but Ethan simply smiled and gestured to his companions. "This victory belongs to all of us," he said humbly. Despite the celebrations, Ethan knew their journey had been far more than a fight against oppression. It was about forging connections where none seemed possible. Back on Unity Station *, he and his wives had started as strangers bound by coercion, yet over time, they had built something real. Their bond wasn't perfect. It still carried scars from battles fought and sacrifices made. But it was genuine, a partnership rooted in trust, respect, and shared purpose. On Earth, life began anew. Ethan chose to stay with Zenera, Nyxera, and Calith, not because of any law, but because he had come to love them in ways he never thought possible. Zenera's strength inspired him daily, reminding him what it meant to stand firm in the face of adversity. Nyxera's wisdom challenged him to see beyond surface-level emotions, deepening his understanding of himself and others. And Calith's playful spirit brought light to even the darkest moments, teaching him to embrace joy amid hardship. Their unconventional family became a symbol of hope for billions. Humans and aliens alike looked to them as proof that differences weren't barriers. They were bridges waiting to be crossed. Together, they traveled the galaxy, advocating for interstellar cooperation without coercion. They visited planets ravaged by the Valith's policies, helping rebuild communities and foster new alliances based on mutual respect. One evening, as they stood together on a hill overlooking Earth, Ethan reflected on how far they'd come. The stars twinkled above, vast and endless, each one representing countless possibilities. He reached out, taking Zenara's hand in his while Nexera leaned against his shoulder and Calith rested her head on his arm. In that moment, he felt a profound sense of peace, not just for himself, but for the future they were building together. "We did it," Ethan murmured, gazing at the night sky. "Against all odds, we broke free." "And now we begin again," Zenara replied, her golden eyes gleaming with determination. "Yes," Nexera added softly, "but this time, it's on our terms." Calith grinned mischievously. "And maybe next time, we won't need explosions to make things work." They laughed, the sound carrying through the cool night air like music. Though challenges lay ahead, Ethan knew they would face them together, as equals, as partners, and as family. As dawn broke over the horizon, painting the sky in hues of gold and crimson, Ethan felt a renewed sense of purpose. Humanity's place in the cosmos was no longer defined by fear or force, but by hope and collaboration. And standing beside him were three extraordinary women who had taught him that love, like freedom, wasn't something to be imposed. It was something to be chosen. Together, they turned toward the rising sun, ready to embrace whatever adventures awaited them among the stars.